The morning started like any other day on Viridian Prime. Jake Morrison stood in his small medical clinic, preparing for another routine day of treating miners and colonists. He had moved to this distant planet 2 years ago. Looking for peace after spending 15 years as a military doctor, the quiet life suited him well. He was pouring his second cup of coffee when the ground began to shake. At first, Jake thought it was just another mining explosion from the nearby quarry, but then the shaking got stronger. Pictures fell from the walls. Medical supplies tumbled from shelves. Through the window, he saw colonists running in panic through the settlement streets. Jake rushed to the door and pushed it open. What he saw made him freeze in place. Something huge was landing in the middle of the colony square. Dust and dirt flew everywhere as massive wings beat against the air. When the dust finally settled, Jake could see clearly what had arrived. It was a dragon. A real living dragon. The creature was enormous, at least 20 feet tall even when crouched low to the ground. Her scales were deep green, like the color of the forest after rain. Her wings were folded against her back and her long tail curled around her body. But what caught Jake's attention most were her eyes. They were golden and filled with tears. The dragon was crying. Jake had heard stories about the Dracarians, the native species that lived in the mountains far from human settlements. The colonists had an unspoken agreement with them to stay in separate territories. No one bothered them, and they did not bother the humans. Until now. The dragon let out a sound that made Jake's heart ache. It was a cry of pure desperation, like a mother's wail. In her large clawed hands, she held something small and still. Jake squinted to see better. It was a baby dragon no bigger than a human child. Behind Jake, his assistant Claire came running out of the clinic. Her face was pale with fear.
Jake, we need to get inside and lock the doors.
That thing could kill us all, but Jake could not move. He watched as the mother dragon lifted her head and looked directly at him. Their eyes met across the square. In that moment, Jake understood. This was not an attack. This was a plea for help. The baby dragon in her arms was dying. Jake had seen that same look countless times during his years as a military doctor. Parents bringing their wounded children to field hospitals, their eyes begging him to save their babies. It did not matter that this parent was a dragon. The desperation was exactly the same. "Claire," Jake said quietly, still not breaking eye contact with the dragon, "go inside and prepare the emergency room. We have a patient coming." Claire stared at him like he had lost his mind. "Jake, that's a dragon. We can't treat a dragon. We don't know anything about their biology. And it might be dangerous. Look at her, Claire. Really look. She's not here to hurt us. She's here because her baby is dying and she thinks we can help." The mother dragon made another sound, softer this time. She began to move forward slowly, crawling on her 4 legs to make herself less threatening. Each step was careful and measured. She was trying not to scare them. Jake took a deep breath and started walking toward her. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. Every survival instinct screamed at him to run. But his doctor's instinct was stronger. Someone needed help, and he had taken an oath to help those in need. As he got closer, Jake could see the baby dragon more clearly. The little one's scales were dull and lifeless. Her chest barely moved with each breath. Fever radiated from her small body. The baby was in bad shape, maybe only hours from death. The mother dragon watched Jake approach. Tears continued to roll down her scaled cheeks. When he was close enough to touch, she did something that surprised him. Very slowly, very gently, she extended her arms toward him. She was offering him her child. Jake looked up into those golden eyes again. He saw fear there, and hope, and a trust that seemed impossible given that they were 2 different species who had never spoken to each other before. But he also saw something else. He saw a mother who would do anything to save her baby. "It's okay," Jake said softly, even though he did not know if she could understand his words. "I'll help. I promise I'll try." He reached out and carefully took the baby dragon into his arms. The little one was hot with fever, and so light that Jake worried she was already too far gone. But he could feel a heartbeat fast and irregular. There was still time. Jake turned and walked back toward his clinic. The mother dragon followed, moving on all 4s to fit through the door. Claire had backed up against the wall, her eyes wide with shock. Other colonists were gathering outside, some with weapons, all of them shouting questions and warnings. "Everyone stay back," Jake called out. "I need to work. Claire, I need you to help me." "Right now." Claire hesitated for only a moment. Then her training took over. She had been a nurse for 10 years before coming to this colony. She knew what to do in an emergency. Together, they carried the baby dragon to the examination table. The mother dragon squeezed herself into the corner of the room, making herself as small as possible. She watched every move Jake made with intense focus. Her claws dug into the floor, leaving deep scratches in the metal. Her whole body trembled with the effort of staying calm. Jake began his examination. The baby's breathing was shallow and rapid. Her temperature was dangerously high. He pulled out his medical scanner and ran it over the small body. The results made him frown. "It's some kind of infection," he told Claire. "Bacterial, I think. It spread to her lungs and bloodstream. If we don't treat it fast, she won't make it. But Jake, we don't know how to treat a dragon. Our medicine might not work. It might even make things worse." Jake knew she was right. This was a huge risk. But doing nothing was not an option. He looked over at the mother dragon, still crying silently in the corner. He thought about all the times he had told parents that their children could not be saved. He never wanted to say those words to another parent, human or not. "Then we learn fast," Jake said. "Get me everything we have on reptilian biology, and prep a broad-spectrum antibiotic. We're going to save this baby." Outside, alarms began to sound throughout the colony. Security forces were being called. Soon someone in authority would come to stop what Jake was doing. But he did not care about that now. He had a patient, and that was all that mattered. The mother dragon made a low sound, almost like a purr. Jake glanced at her and saw something new in her eyes. Hope. She believed in him. She trusted him to save her child. Jake Morrison had made a choice. Now he had to live with whatever came next. Commander Lisa Hayes arrived at the clinic exactly 30 minutes after the dragon landed. She brought 4 security guards with her, all carrying weapons. They burst through the clinic door ready for trouble. What they found made them all stop and stare in confusion. The huge mother dragon was curled up in the corner of the emergency room, trying to make herself smaller. Jake was bent over the baby dragon on his examination table, working with steady hands. Claire moved quickly around the room, gathering supplies and calling out medical readings. The whole scene looked almost normal, except for the dragon in the corner. Lisa stepped forward with her weapon still raised.
Morrison, have you completely lost your mind?
"You brought a wild animal into the colony."
Do you know how many rules you just broke?
Jake did not look up from his work. His hands were busy inserting a thin tube into the baby dragon's arm to give her medicine. "Your rules will have to wait, Commander. This child has maybe 20 minutes before her organs start to shut down. Nothing else matters right now. Child, it's a dragon, Jake. It's not a human being. We have no idea what these creatures are capable of." Jake finally glanced at Lisa. His face was serious. "Then look at her. Look at the mother." Lisa followed his gaze to the corner where the mother dragon sat. The creature was still crying, tears making wet tracks down her scaled face. Her whole body shook, but she had not made any threatening moves. Her claws were digging deep grooves into the metal floor, but she stayed perfectly still. She was clearly trying very hard not to be scary. Claire spoke up, her voice gentle but firm. "Commander, I've worked in hospitals for 10 years. I've seen hundreds of parents with sick children. That dragon looks exactly like every scared mother I've ever met. This isn't about species. It's about a parent trying to save her baby." One of the security guards lowered his weapon slightly. "Commander, maybe we should just let the doc work. That dragon hasn't tried to hurt anyone." Lisa hesitated. Everything in her training said to remove the threat and secure the area. But her gut told her something different. This situation was not what it appeared to be. Finally, she lowered her weapon and signaled her team to do the same. "Fine. Do what you can, Doctor. But I'm calling this in to Central Command. They'll want to know about this. And Jake, there will be consequences." "I understand," Jake said simply. He had already accepted that his actions would cause problems. But he could live with consequences. He could not live with letting a child die when he had the power to help. After Lisa left, Jake focused completely on his patient. The medical scanners showed that dragon biology was similar enough to Earth reptiles for him to make educated guesses. The baby had a severe bacterial infection that was attacking her lungs and blood. Without treatment, she would die within hours. The problem was that Jake had never treated a dragon before. No human had. He was working blind, using his years of experience to guide his choices. Every decision was a gamble. "Claire, I need you to modify our strongest antibiotic. Increase the dosage for a metabolism that runs hot. And bring me cooling blankets. We have to bring this fever down before it cooks her brain. For the next 3 hours, Jake worked without stopping. He adapted human medical procedures to fit an alien body. He trusted his instincts and his training. Claire helped him every step of the way, anticipating what he needed before he asked. The mother dragon never moved from her corner. She watched everything with those intense golden eyes. Sometimes she made soft sounds, almost like she was encouraging her baby to fight. Her tears never stopped falling. Jake tried drug combinations that had never been used before. He monitored the baby's vital signs constantly, adjusting treatment whenever something changed. It was the hardest medical case of his entire career. One wrong choice could kill his patient, but slowly, very slowly, things began to improve. The baby dragon's breathing became less labored. Her heartbeat steadied. The fever started to come down. After 3 hours of intense work, Jake saw the numbers he had been hoping for. She was going to survive. He looked over at the mother dragon and gave her a tired smile. She's going to be okay. Your daughter is going to live. The mother dragon stared at him for a long moment. Then something amazing happened. She seemed to understand. Relief flooded her features. She made a sound that was part cry, part laugh. Her whole body relaxed for the first time since arriving. Claire wiped tears from her own eyes. I can't believe it. You actually did it, Jake. You saved her. The mother dragon slowly stood up and approached the table. She moved with incredible care despite her size, like she was afraid of breaking something. When she reached the table, she gently touched her baby's head with one large claw. The touch was so tender, so loving, that it brought tears to Jake's eyes too. Then the dragon did something that changed everything. She looked directly at Jake, placed one clawed hand over her chest where her heart would be, and bowed her head low. It was a gesture of deep gratitude and respect. Even though they could not speak the same language, her meaning was perfectly clear. She was thanking him for saving her child's life. Jake bowed his head in return. You're welcome. She's a fighter, your little one. She's going to need rest and medicine for a few days, but she'll be fine. The dragon seemed to understand his tone, if not his words. She settled back into her corner, but now she looked peaceful instead of terrified. Her baby was safe. That was all that mattered to her. Outside the clinic, a crowd had gathered. Jake could hear people arguing loudly. Some were calling him a hero. Others were calling him a fool who had put everyone in danger. The colony was divided about what had happened. Claire looked worried. Jake, people are really upset out there. Pete Sullivan is gathering signatures to have you removed as colony doctor, and I heard that Central Command is sending someone to deal with the situation. Jake sighed. He had expected this. Let them come. I made my choice. I'd make it again. Even if it cost you everything, especially then. Jake looked at the sleeping baby dragon, her chest now rising and falling in a healthy rhythm. Claire, I've seen a lot of death in my life. I've held dying soldiers and told parents their children couldn't be saved. Those memories haunt me. But saving this little one, that's something I can be proud of. That's something worth fighting for, Claire smiled. You're a good man, Jake Morrison. A little crazy, but good. The rest of the day passed quietly. Jake checked on his patient every hour. The baby dragon continued to improve, her body responding well to the treatment. The mother dragon stayed close, never leaving her child's side. Late that afternoon, Jake examined the mother dragon more closely. He made a disturbing discovery. She had deep wounds on her back and sides, claw marks from other dragons. The wounds were several days old but still looked painful. You were attacked, Jake said softly as he cleaned the wounds. Other dragons did this to you. The mother dragon made a low sound, sad and tired. Jake understood. You fought your own people to bring your baby here. They didn't want you to come to the humans, but you did it anyway. He treated her wounds carefully, applying medicine and bandages. The dragon let him work without complaint. She seemed to understand that he was helping her just like he had helped her daughter. As the sun set over Viridian Prime, Jake stood at the clinic window and watched the sky turn orange and purple. Tomorrow would bring trouble, he was sure of that. Central Command would arrive with questions and demands. The colonists would want answers. Everything was about to get much more complicated. But tonight, a mother dragon slept peacefully beside her healthy child. They were safe and warm and together. Sometimes Jake thought that was enough. Sometimes one good choice, one act of kindness was worth whatever came next. He just hoped he was ready for it. Outside, the colony buzzed with activity. People gathered in small groups talking excitedly about the dragon in the medical clinic. Children pressed their faces against the clinic windows, trying to get a glimpse of the amazing creatures inside. Parents pulled them back, unsure if it was safe. And somewhere in the distant mountains, other dragons watched the human settlement with new interest. One of their own had gone to the humans for help. What happened next would determine the future of both species, but Jake Morrison did not know any of that yet. He only knew that he had saved a life today, and that was good enough. By the next morning, everyone in the colony had an opinion about what Jake had done. Half the people thought he was brave and compassionate. The other half thought he was reckless and dangerous. Arguments broke out in the dining halls, shops, and streets. Families who had been friends for years suddenly found themselves on opposite sides. Jake woke up early to check on his patients. The baby dragon was awake and alert. Her eyes were bright and curious as she looked around the room. She was still weak but clearly feeling much better. The mother dragon, whom Claire had started calling Vera, watched her daughter with obvious joy. Jake smiled at them. "Good morning, ladies. How are we feeling today?" The baby dragon made a chirping sound. Vera responded with a gentle rumble. They were communicating with each other in their own language. Jake wished he could understand them. He was in the middle of examining the baby when he heard loud voices outside. Claire came rushing in looking worried. "Jake, Pete Sullivan is here with a bunch of people. They don't look happy." Pete Sullivan was the colony administrator, the closest thing they had to a mayor. He was a short man with thinning hair and a permanent frown. He pushed through the clinic doors, leading a group of about 20 colonists. His face was red with anger. "Morrison, this has gone too far. That creature needs to leave, and you need to answer for breaking at least 15 colony regulations." Jake stepped between Pete and the recovery room where Vera and her baby rested. "That creature has a name. I call her Vera. And her daughter, the one I saved, is Holly. They stay here until Holly is strong enough to travel." "You named them?" Pete looked shocked. "They're not pets, Morrison. They're dangerous wild animals. We don't know anything about them." "They're intelligent beings," Jake corrected him. "Vera understood that I was trying to help her daughter. She trusted me. That takes intelligence and understanding." An older woman named Margaret Lynn stepped forward from the group. She taught at the colony school and everyone respected her. "Dr. Morrison, I appreciate what you did. Your compassion is admirable. But we have human children here. How do we know these dragons won't hurt them?" Jake had been expecting this question. "I've been watching Vera for almost 2 full days now. She's been nothing but gentle and careful. And did you know that she has wounds on her body? Claw marks from other dragons. I think she fought her own people to bring Holly here. She went through a battle to reach the one place she thought could save her daughter." This information surprised many people in the crowd. They looked at each other with uncertain faces. Claire nodded to confirm what Jake said. "It's true," Claire added. "I helped treat her wounds yesterday. She was definitely attacked by other dragons. She risked everything to come here." Pete was not convinced. "That's a nice story, but facts are facts. Central Command has sent a message. They're sending a xenobiology team to study these dragons. Both creatures need to be sedated and transported to a research facility within the next 2 days." Jake felt anger rising in his chest. Absolutely not. Holly is still recovering, and Vera has done nothing to deserve being treated like a lab animal. "I won't allow it." "You don't have a choice in this matter," Pete said firmly. "This is bigger than you now, Morrison. First contact with an intelligent alien species doesn't happen in a small colony clinic. There are procedures. There are protocols that must be followed." Before Jake could argue back, a deep rumbling sound filled the clinic. Everyone turned to see Vera standing in the doorway to the recovery room. She was holding Holly protectively against her chest. The baby dragon was awake and looking at all the humans with frightened eyes. Vera's posture was defensive. Her wings spread slightly, making her look even bigger. Her expression was pure fear. She had understood enough to know that her baby was in danger again. The crowd backed away quickly. Several people reached for weapons. Pete's hand moved to the stun gun on his belt. The tension in the room became thick enough to cut. Jake moved fast. He stepped between the crowd and the dragon, spreading his arms wide. "Everyone stop. Just stop and think for one moment." His voice carried the authority of someone who had commanded soldiers in battle. The crowd froze. Even Pete hesitated. "We came to this planet as colonists and explorers," Jake continued. "We said we came in peace to find new worlds and new life. Now we have a chance to prove we meant those words. A mother came to us asking for help. She chose to trust us instead of her own people. How we respond to this will define humanity's character for generations to come. Margaret Lynn spoke again, her voice thoughtful. What exactly are you suggesting, Doctor? Jake turned to look at Vera. Their eyes met. He saw intelligence there and understanding. I'm suggesting we let them go home when Holly is healthy. Let them return to their people with a story about how humans helped them. We build trust one act of kindness at a time. That's how real peace is made. And if the other dragons attack us? Someone shouted from the back of the crowd. What if they come for revenge? Then we deal with it, Jake said calmly. But I don't think they will. I think Vera will tell her people what happened here. I think she'll tell them that some humans see them as more than monsters or research subjects. That we see them as thinking, feeling beings who deserve respect. The crowd murmured among themselves. Nobody seemed sure what to do. But then Claire stepped up beside Jake, showing her support. To everyone's surprise, Margaret Lynn joined them too. The doctor is right, Margaret said. We teach our children about compassion and doing what's right even when it's hard. Maybe it's time we showed them what those lessons look like in real life. One by one, other colonists stepped forward to stand with Jake. Soon, half the crowd stood between the dragons and those who wanted to take them away. The other half looked uncertain and uncomfortable. Pete Sullivan looked around at the divided crowd. He was clearly losing control of the situation. This isn't over, Morrison. When the Central Command team arrives tomorrow, there will be serious consequences for you. I know, Jake said quietly, but some things are worth the price. This is one of them. Pete and his supporters left, still muttering angrily. The people who stayed behind looked at Vera and Holly with new eyes. The dragons were no longer just scary monsters. They were a mother and daughter who needed help. An 8-year-old girl named Amy Chen stepped forward. Her father was the colony's chief engineer. She was carrying a small bag in her hands. Mr. Jake, can I give Holly a present? Jake looked at Amy's father, who nodded permission. Sure, Amy, but move slowly and let her see you coming. Amy walked very carefully toward Vera and Holly. The dragons watched her with caution, but did not seem frightened. Amy stopped a few feet away and held out her bag. I brought some pretty stones I found. I thought maybe Holly would like them. She poured the stones onto the floor. They were smooth river rocks that sparkled in the light. Holly's eyes widened with interest. She squirmed in her mother's arms, clearly wanting to see the stones up close. Vera gently set Holly down on the floor. The baby dragon was still wobbly on her legs, but she managed to walk over to the stones. She picked one up with her small claws and held it up to the light. A delighted chirp escaped her mouth. Amy giggled. She likes them. For the next 10 minutes, the two children played together. Holly showed Amy how dragons could make the stones glow slightly by warming them with their breath. Amy showed Holly how to stack them into a small tower. Their laughter filled the clinic, one human child and one dragon child just playing together like it was the most natural thing in the world. The adults watched in amazement. This was something none of them had ever imagined possible. Fear began to melt away, replaced by wonder and hope. Jake caught Vera's eye. The mother dragon looked at him with an expression he could almost read. She was grateful, not just for saving Holly's life, but for treating them with kindness and respect. That evening, after everyone had gone home, Jake sat with Vera in the recovery room. Holly was sleeping peacefully, her belly full of food that Claire had carefully prepared. Vera watched her daughter with the timeless expression of a mother watching her child sleep. Tomorrow is going to be hard, Jake said softly. The people from Central Command won't be as understanding as the colonists. They'll want to take you and Holly away for study. I'll fight them as hard as I can, but I don't know if I can win. Vera looked at him with those intelligent golden eyes. Then she did something surprising. She reached out and gently touched Jake's chest right over his heart. It was the same gesture she had made the day before, but this time Jake understood it better. She was telling him that she knew his heart was good. That she trusted him. Jake placed his hand over hers. I promise I'll do everything I can to keep you and Holly safe. You have my word. Outside, the stars were coming out. In the distant mountains, other dragons stirred. They had seen one of their own return to the human settlement instead of coming home. They did not understand why, but they were curious, and some of them were angry. Tomorrow would bring a reckoning. But tonight, in a small clinic on a distant world, two different species sat together in peace. And that peace, however brief it might be, was something beautiful. Jake Morrison had made his choice. Now he would face whatever came next with his head held high. The Central Command ship arrived early the next morning, hours before anyone expected it. The massive military vessel descended through the clouds like a metal mountain, its weapons clearly visible on its hull. This was not a diplomatic visit. This was a show of force. Jake was with Vera and Holly when the alarm sounded. The baby dragon had been playing with the stones Amy had given her, her energy and health improving dramatically. But when the alarm started, both dragons became tense and afraid. Commander Lisa Hayes burst into the clinic, her face pale. "Jake, they brought Admiral Kevin Price. He's the head of xenobiology containment." "This is worse than I thought." "How bad?" Jake asked. "He has authorization to use force if necessary to secure alien specimens. He doesn't care about colonial rights or independence. And Jake, he has a reputation for being cold and ruthless." Within an hour, Admiral Price marched into the colony square with 20 armed Marines in full combat gear. He was a tall man with gray hair and hard blue eyes. His uniform was perfect and his posture was rigid. Everything about him said military discipline and absolute authority. The colonists gathered in the square, hundreds of them. They wanted to see what would happen. Many of them had changed their minds about the dragons after seeing Holly play with Amy. They no longer saw monsters. They saw a mother and child who needed protection. Price stopped in the center of the square and spoke in a loud, commanding voice. "I am Admiral Kevin Price. I am here to take custody of the alien creatures currently being harbored in this colony. Anyone who interferes will be charged with obstruction of federal authority and face military justice." Jake pushed through the crowd and stood facing the Admiral. "Those creatures are intelligent beings. A mother and her child. They came here for help, not to be locked up and studied like animals." Price turned his cold eyes on Jake. He looked him up and down with barely hidden contempt. "Dr. Morrison, I've read your file. Decorated veteran, excellent medic, but apparently too soft for real military work. That's why they sent you to this backwater colony, isn't it? You couldn't make the hard decisions." Jake felt the sting of those words, but kept his voice calm. "The hard decision isn't always the cruel one, Admiral. Sometimes it takes more courage to show mercy than to show force." "Mercy?" Price laughed without humor. "These dragons could be dangerous. They need to be contained and studied before we can determine if they're a threat to human colonies. That's basic security protocol." "Or," came a new voice from behind them, "you could try asking us." Everyone turned in shock. The voice had come from the clinic entrance. Standing there was Holly with Vera right behind her. But something was different. Holly was wearing a collar around her neck, and when she spoke again, the words came through a small device attached to it. Claire had built a translator. Holly stepped forward, walking on her four legs but holding her head high. Her voice through the translator was young but clear. "We mean no harm to humans. My mother brought me here because she knew you could save my life. She risked everything because she believed in your kindness." The entire crowd went silent. Even the Marines looked uncertain. Admiral Price stared at the young dragon with an expression somewhere between shock and suspicion. Holly continued, her confidence growing. "My people have watched you from the mountains since you arrived on our world. We have been afraid of each other. But my mother chose to trust. She chose to build a bridge between our kinds. Dr. Jake chose to cross that bridge. Why would you burn it now?" Vera stepped forward too. She wore a similar translator collar. When she spoke, her voice was deeper and filled with dignity. "My daughter speaks the truth. We came in peace. We come still in peace. We ask only for friendship and understanding. Is that not what humans say they seek among the stars?" Admiral Price recovered from his surprise quickly. His face returned to its stern expression. "Even if you mean no harm, there are protocols that must be followed. First contact with alien species requires proper procedures and security measures. Then follow them correctly," Jake said firmly. "Treat Vera and Holly as what they are, representatives of their people, not prisoners or test subjects. Let them return home and tell their people what happened here. Let us do this the right way with respect and dignity." Price was about to respond when Margaret Lynn spoke up from the crowd. "Admiral, I'm a teacher. I've taught history for 30 years. Every time humanity has encountered another culture, we've had a choice. We can meet them with weapons or with open hands. The weapons approach has never ended well. Maybe it's time we tried something different." Other colonists began speaking up, sharing their support for Jake's approach. More and more voices joined in. Even some of the Marines looked uncomfortable with the idea of treating Vera and Holly as prisoners. Price held up his hand for silence. For a long moment he said nothing. His face was unreadable. Finally he spoke. I will contact Central Command and recommend a formal first contact protocol. The Dragons will be granted temporary diplomatic status while we establish proper procedures. Relief flooded through the crowd. But Price wasn't finished. He fixed Jake with a hard stare. However, Dr. Morrison, you will be assigned as the official human liaison to the Dracarian species. If anything goes wrong, if there are any incidents or problems, it will be on your head. Do you accept that responsibility? Jake did not hesitate. Yes, sir. I accept, Price nodded curtly. Very well. I'll return to my ship and begin the necessary communications. In the meantime, the Dragons remain here under your supervision. He turned to his Marines. Stand down. As the Admiral and his troops left, the crowd erupted in cheers and applause. People rushed forward to congratulate Jake and get a closer look at Vera and Holly. The two Dragons were surrounded by curious but friendly humans. Amy Chen ran up to Holly and hugged her carefully. You can talk. That's so cool. Holly made a sound through her translator that might have been a laugh. Claire made this device for us. She worked on it for 2 days using recordings of our voices. She's very smart. Claire blushed at the compliment. I just did what needed to be done. I figured if we could talk to each other, a lot of problems would solve themselves. Vera approached Jake and placed her clawed hand on his shoulder. You stood up for us even when it could have cost you everything. My people have a saying. True strength is not in claws or fire, but in the courage to do what is right. You have that strength, Jake Morrison. Jake felt his throat tighten with emotion. I just did what any doctor would do. I helped someone who needed it. No, Vera said gently. You did what few would have the courage to do. You looked past fear and saw need. You built a bridge when others would have built walls. That is a rare gift. The rest of the day was spent in celebration. The colonists brought food and gifts for Vera and Holly. Children played with the young dragon, teaching her games and learning dragon games in return. Adults asked Vera questions about her people and their culture. Barriers broke down with every conversation and shared laugh. That evening, Vera asked to speak with Jake privately. They went to the clinic roof where they could see the mountains in the distance. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. I need to take Holly home soon, Vera said. She is well enough to travel, and my people will be worried. But I want to ask you something first. Anything, Jake said. Will you come with us? Will you visit our home and meet our elders? They need to see with their own eyes what happened here. They need to understand that not all humans are to be feared. Jake was surprised by the invitation. You want me to come to your home? Into dragon territory? I want you to help me build a real peace between our peoples. One meeting at a time. One friendship at a time. Vera looked at him with hope in her golden eyes. Will you come? Jake thought about all the risks. He thought about how his life had changed in just a few days. But mostly he thought about the little dragon who had been dying in his clinic and was now healthy and playing with human children. He thought about the mother who had trusted him when she had no reason to. Yes, he said finally. I'll come with you. When do we leave? Tomorrow at dawn, Vera said. Holly needs one more night of rest. Then we begin the next chapter of this story. They stood together watching the sunset, human and dragon, looking toward a future neither of them could fully imagine. In the mountains, other dragons waited to hear Vera's story. Some would be angry, some would be afraid, but some would be curious and hopeful. Tomorrow would be the first step toward something unprecedented. A real friendship between species. A peace built not on treaties or fear, but on simple kindness and mutual respect. Jake Morrison had saved a dragon's life. Now he was about to help change 2 civilizations forever. He still did not think of himself as a hero. He was just a doctor who had made a choice to help someone in need. But sometimes that is exactly what a hero is. 3 months had passed since Jake first met Vera and Holly. The mining colony on Viridian Prime looked completely different now. What had started as a desperate mother seeking help for her dying child had grown into something much bigger. The colony had become the first place in history where humans and dragons lived together in peace. The changes had not come easily. There had been misunderstandings and problems along the way. Dragons and humans were very different in many ways. They ate different foods, slept at different times, and had different ideas about personal space. But slowly, with patience and goodwill, they learned to understand each other. Jake had traveled to the dragon home in the mountains, just as he promised. The journey had been frightening and amazing at the same time. The dragon city was built into the side of a mountain, with caves that glowed with natural crystals. The dragons lived in family groups, with the elders making decisions for the whole community. The dragon elders had been suspicious of Jake at first. Many of them believed that humans were dangerous and should be avoided, but Vera had spoken on Jake's behalf. She told them the whole story of how he saved Holly's life without asking for anything in return. She told them about his courage and kindness. Slowly, the elders began to listen. They asked Jake many questions about human culture and goals. Jake answered honestly, even when the truth was uncomfortable. He admitted that some humans were greedy and violent, but he also told them about the many humans who valued peace and cooperation. One of the elders, an ancient dragon named Skyfire, had been particularly interested in human medicine. She was a healer among her people and wanted to learn everything Jake could teach her. Together, they began creating a medical guide that worked for both species. Claire traveled to the mountains to help with this project, and she and Skyfire became close friends. As trust grew, more dragons began visiting the colony. They brought gifts of beautiful crystals and strange materials from deep in the mountains. In return, the humans shared their technology and knowledge. The dragons were fascinated by human computers and machines. The humans were amazed by dragon art and music. The mining operations improved dramatically with dragon help. Dragons could navigate underground tunnels that were too dangerous for humans. They could sense weak spots in cave walls before they collapsed. In return, humans shared their safety equipment and taught dragons how to use communication devices. Working together, they were much more efficient than either species working alone. The colony school now had dragon students. Margaret Lynn taught both human and dragon children together. She discovered that young dragons learned very quickly and had excellent memories. The dragon children taught the human children about their history and culture. Holly and Amy Chen were still best friends and could usually be found playing together after school. But the most remarkable change was in the colony square. Where the dragons had once been feared as monsters, a beautiful monument now stood. It was carved from the same crystal that dragons used in their sacred places. The statue showed Jake holding baby Holly while Vera looked on. Words were carved into the base in both human and dragon languages. They said simply, "Where compassion bridges worlds." Today was the day the monument would be officially unveiled. People from all over had come to see it. Even Admiral Price had returned for the ceremony. The man who had once arrived with weapons and threats now stood watching the crowd with something like respect on his face. Price found Jake before the ceremony began. "Dr. Morrison, I owe you an apology. When I first came here, I thought you were a fool. I thought you were putting people at risk for sentimental reasons. I was wrong." Jake shook his hand. "You were doing your job, Admiral. You were trying to protect people. I understand that. Maybe," Price said. "But you were doing something more important. You were building a future. There are now 12 other colony worlds asking for guidance on how to approach the alien species they've discovered. Your example here is changing how humanity interacts with the galaxy." Vera approached them with Holly at her side. The young dragon had grown significantly in 3 months. Her scales now shone bright green in the sunlight. She was healthy and strong and full of energy. "Hello, Admiral Price," Holly said through her translator collar. All the dragons who visited the colony wore them now. "Thank you for coming to our celebration." Price looked down at the young dragon and smiled, something Jake had never seen him do before. "Thank you for inviting me, Holly. How are you feeling?"
I'm great.
"Mom says I'm completely healthy now. Jake says I'm a medical miracle." Holly bounced excitedly. "And guess what? I'm going to human school now. I'm learning math and science and history. It's so interesting." "That's wonderful," Price said. He looked at Vera. "You must be very proud of her." "I am proud of many things," Vera said. "Proud of my daughter's strength. Proud of the peace we have built. But most of all, I am proud to call Jake Morrison my friend. He saved not just Holly's life, but the future of both our peoples." The ceremony began with speeches from colony leaders and dragon elders. Pete Sullivan, who had once demanded the dragons be removed, now spoke about the benefits of cooperation between species. Margaret Lynn talked about how her students had grown from learning about dragon culture. Skyfire described how human medicine had saved several dragon lives since Jake taught her new techniques. Finally, Jake was asked to speak. He stood before the crowd of humans and dragons feeling nervous. He had never been good at public speaking, but when he looked at Vera and Holly, he knew what to say. 3 months ago, a mother made an impossible choice. She brought her dying child to strangers, hoping for mercy. That took incredible courage, but it also took hope. Hope that somewhere in the universe there were beings who would see past differences and recognize shared values like love and family. Jake paused, looking around at the mixed crowd. I'm just a doctor. I saw a sick child and I did what I was trained to do. I helped. I didn't think about species or politics or consequences. I just saw someone who needed help. But that one choice, that one moment of compassion, changed everything. It showed us that we don't have to be the same to understand each other. We don't have to look alike to recognize the same love in each other's eyes when we look at our children. He gestured to the statue behind him. This monument isn't really about me. It's about what happens when we choose understanding over fear. When we choose to build bridges instead of walls. Every person here, human and dragon, has contributed to this peace. Every friendship formed, every lesson shared, every moment of patience when things were difficult. That's what this monument celebrates. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Dragons made their rumbling sounds of approval. Human children and dragon children stood together, clapping and cheering. After the ceremony, there was a huge celebration. The dragons brought food from their culture, strange fruits and roasted meats prepared with spices humans had never tasted. The humans contributed dishes from Earth and other human worlds. Everyone tried everything, sharing meals and stories. Jake sat with Vera, Holly, Claire, and Amy watching the celebration. Young dragons and human children played games together in the square. Adults of both species stood in groups, talking and laughing. It looked so natural, so normal, that it was hard to remember how impossible it had seemed just 3 months ago. I've been thinking, Vera said to Jake. Holly will need to choose a path soon. In our culture, young dragons must decide what role they will play in society. Some become warriors, some become healers, some become teachers. What does Holly want to be? Jake asked. Holly looked up at him with bright eyes. I want to be like you, Jake. I want to be a doctor. I want to help people, both humans and dragons. I want to heal others the way you healed me. Jake felt tears in his eyes. That's a wonderful choice, Holly. I would be honored to teach you everything I know. And I will teach her dragon healing methods, Skyfire added, joining their group. She can be the first doctor trained in both traditions. She will save many lives, Claire smiled. We'll need to design a whole new medical curriculum. This is exciting. Amy hugged Holly. You're going to be the best doctor ever. As the sun set over Viridian Prime, painting the sky in beautiful colors, Jake thought about how much had changed. He had come to this colony looking for a quiet life after years of military service. He thought he would spend his days treating minor injuries and common illnesses. He never imagined he would become the bridge between two civilizations. But life had other plans. A weeping mother dragon had brought her dying child to his door, and he had made a choice. Not because he was special or brave, but because it was the right thing to do. He had seen suffering and responded with compassion. That simple act had rippled outward, touching hundreds of lives and changing the course of history. Admiral Price approached Jake one more time before leaving. Dr. Morrison, Central Command wants to offer you a position. They want you to train other doctors and diplomats in first contact procedures. You would travel to different colonies and help establish peaceful relations with alien species. The pay would be excellent, and you would have significant authority.